The energy on Capitol Hill that day felt eerily electric. The kind of quiet that usually signals something explosive is about to happen. The air was heavy not with formality, but with anticipation. Reporters leaned forward in their seats. Staffers hovered near doors with earpieces tightly nestled, and members of Congress clutched briefing folders close to their chests as if bracing for impact. It wasn't just any hearing. The topic at hand was the United States' recent military escalation in Iran, a subject that had already ignited global concern, domestic unease, and political polarization. But few expected the firestorm that would erupt once Representative Jasmine Crockett took the microphone. Her words didn't just challenge the official narrative, they shattered it, piece by piece, until all that remained was the raw, uncomfortable truth the nation had been trying to avoid. Governor Kristi Noem had entered the room composed, calculated, and flanked by aides who appeared to have rehearsed every conceivable question. Dressed in a sharp suit and with the firm posture of someone who knew she was walking into a contentious exchange, Noem wasted no time parroting the administration's official line. The strike on Iranian targets was a preemptive, defensive maneuver based on actionable intelligence. Her rhetoric was all too familiar, statements wrapped in patriotism, appealing to national security, and insisting that Americans are safer today. It was a claim that, for years, would have gone unchallenged in such a setting. But that day, Jasmine Crockett wasn't playing by the old rules. Leaning in, with eyes sharpened like a scalpel, Crockett didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Her calm, deliberate tone cut deeper than any shout. "I want to understand something very clearly, Governor," she began. "You say we're safer now. But safer from what exactly? And at what cost?" It wasn't rhetorical. It wasn't theoretical. It was the ignition switch. The room tensed instantly. Noem offered a courteous nod and attempted to dodge, citing intelligence briefings that couldn't be disclosed in public. That was the moment Crockett made it clear she wasn't going to let this be just another episode of vague statements and brushed off accountability. "Is this safety?" she asked again, this time slower, more focused. "Or is it straight up fear we're selling to the American public?" The phrase echoed in the chamber like a thunderclap. The crowd stirred, and even seasoned lawmakers appeared stunned by the rawness of the question. Crockett wasn't just asking about policy. She was indicting a pattern, a decades-long habit of invoking fear to justify war, to militarize diplomacy, and to funnel trillions of dollars into defense budgets while basic needs at home remain unmet. As Noem tried to respond, pivoting to terms like proactive strategy and regional stability, Crockett pressed forward. She wasn't merely reacting, she was leading the conversation. She cited previous military engagements, from Iraq to Libya, that had begun under similar pretexts of preventing threats but resulted in long-term destabilization, humanitarian crises, and the emergence of new terrorist networks. "We've been here before," she said. "We've seen the funerals, the folded flags, the broken families, and every time, we're told it's for our safety. But the question I'm asking is, whose safety? Whose fear are we actually protecting?" Her line of questioning became more precise, even surgical. She brought data into the conversation, figures on civilian casualties from prior conflicts, rising PTSD rates among veterans, and the hundreds of billions spent on defense that could have instead funded healthcare, education, or infrastructure. She mentioned the delayed benefits to Gold Star families and exposed how veterans often find themselves lost in a bureaucratic maze when seeking help for service-connected injuries. It wasn't just policy critique. It was human storytelling. She transformed statistics into reality. One by one, she dismantled the justification for conflict like a skilled litigator in a trial of national conscience. Noem tried again to shift gears, arguing that not responding to Iranian provocations would have shown weakness and invited further aggression. Crockett pounced. "Weakness isn't restraint," she said fiercely. "Weakness is failing to imagine peace. Weakness is doing the same thing over and expecting a different result. You want to talk strength? Strength is being bold enough to say, we're not going to kill to feel powerful today." That line, equal parts accusation and aspiration, left the room in stunned silence. From there, Crockett went deeper, linking foreign policy to domestic failures. She connected the dots between the trillions spent abroad and the suffering at home. She described communities in her district where people still couldn't access clean water, where hospitals were closing down, where students were crushed under the weight of debt, and where young people were dying from lack of mental health care. If our government can launch airstrikes overnight, she said bitterly, then why can't it fix the pipes in Flint, Michigan? Why can't it pay teachers? Why can't it keep people from dying simply because they're poor? At this point, even viewer at home began to feel the walls of the conversation collapsing, revealing truths long buried under the weight of national pride and political convenience. Crockett didn't stop there. She invoked the names of Iranians who had been killed in recent bombings, names that had not made it to mainstream headlines. She quoted international observers who condemned the strikes as reckless. She held up images of destroyed homes, of sobbing children in the rubble, of American soldiers hugging their kids before deployment. Her message was clear: you cannot speak about safety while manufacturing trauma. Social media lit up almost immediately. A clip of Crockett's straight-up fear remark was shared over 6 million times in under 24 hours. Support poured in from journalists, celebrities, veterans, and activists alike. Even some international leaders made discreet remarks praising her courage. Political opponents tried to label her unpatriotic, but it didn't stick. The moment wasn't about partisanship. It was about truth. Americans across the spectrum, left, right, and center, could recognize the gut-level honesty in her voice. She wasn't just challenging Noem. She was calling out a system that many felt had failed them again and again. The backlash against Governor Noem wasn't immediate, but it was inevitable. By the next morning, editorial columns were dissecting her limp responses. Pundits accused her of hiding behind jargon. Veterans organizations demanded a clearer explanation for how this escalation would help service members on the ground. Meanwhile, Crockett's office received an avalanche of calls, emails, and letters, many from military families who thanked her for saying what they had felt for years but never heard in the halls of power. One veteran wrote, "I lost my leg in a war that nobody remembers and that we never should have started. I've been waiting for someone in Congress to say what you said today." A mother whose son had just shipped out wrote, "You made me cry, but in a good way, because someone finally sees us. Thank you." In follow-up interviews, Crockett remained consistent. She emphasized that her confrontation wasn't about disrespecting service members or disregarding national security. "This is about doing right by the people who serve," she said. "They deserve more than slogans. They deserve policies rooted in wisdom, not fear." The exchange is already being taught in political science classes. Analysts have begun calling it the Crockett Doctrine, a new articulation of foreign policy that prioritizes peace building over provocation and human well-being over geopolitical chest-thumping. For a nation exhausted by decades of war, it struck a nerve, it planted a seed, and in Jasmine Crockett, people saw not just a voice of opposition, but a vision for the future. As the days passed, Crockett remained unshaken by the media storm. In fact, she doubled down. She introduced a resolution calling for increased congressional oversight on future military actions, including mandatory public briefings before any major offensive. It may not have passed immediately, but it garnered bipartisan curiosity. More importantly, it signaled something new, a refusal to allow the politics of fear to dominate the politics of responsibility. Even in her follow-up town halls, Crockett was met with standing ovations. Constituents told her she had given voice to the voiceless. Military families embraced her message. College students who had never paid attention to foreign policy before were suddenly engaged. Curious, hopeful, her office became a center of renewed civic engagement. And while some critics tried to paint her as naive or too idealistic, the sheer authenticity of her argument made those critiques ring hollow. Crockett wasn't naive, she was tired of the lies. And so were the people. The legacy of that confrontation between Crockett and Noem will likely echo for years to come. It wasn't just a political skirmish, it was a cultural reckoning. In a country long anesthetized to war, Crockett made people feel again, made them question, made them hope. It was a moment that reminded everyone watching that patriotism isn't blind obedience, it's bold truth-telling. That leadership isn't about staying on script, it's about being real. And that safety isn't the absence of threat, it's the presence of justice, compassion, and clarity. So, as we continue to navigate a volatile world, let this confrontation serve as a wake-up call. Let it be the spark that ignites a broader conversation, not just about Iran, but about who we are, what we value, and how we define peace. Jasmine Crockett stood up not just for her district or her party, but for a vision of America that doesn't need to fear in order to feel strong. That's not just politics. That's a turning point. If you believe in truth over talking points and courage over convenience, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you never miss another moment where power gets held accountable. Because this is what democracy looks like.